everyone, and welcome to a new video series where I'm excited to introduce to you a powerful new tool that's transforming the way we think about networking and VPNs, and that's called Tailscale. So just what is Tailscale then? Well, in simple terms, Tailscale is a modern VPN solution that makes it really easy to connect all of your devices wherever they are in a secure and private network. But it's much more than just a VPN. Tailscale takes away the hassle of a traditional VPN. There are no complicated configurations, no more wrestling with firewalls and port forwarding, that kind of thing. You simply install Tailscale on your devices, log in with an identity provider, and within minutes, you're all set up and ready to go. So you might be wondering just how Tailscale makes this private network. Well, Tailscale builds its private network on top of WireGuard. Now, I'm sure most of you out there know what WireGuard is, but for those of you who don't, it's a state-of-the-art open source VPN protocol known for its speed, simplicity, and security. So this gives us a world where we can securely access our Unraid server, an office workstation, or even our friends' servers and computers, all as if they're on the same local network, no matter where we are. Now, Tailscale, it's super versatile. Not only being able to install it on our Unraid server, it also supports Windows, macOS, Linux, iOS, Android, everything you'd expect, so all of our devices can be connected. But not only that, also, which is really cool, we can actually connect it to Docker containers as well. And I don't just mean bringing up the Docker web UI in the Unraid server, although of course we will be doing that, and I'll be showing you how to do it without actually having to use the Tailscale IP to do that. That's in this video. But in the second part of this series, we're going to be looking at how we can actually install Tailscale directly inside a Docker container. And why this is so useful is it allows us to securely access our services without exposing them on the public internet. Now you might be thinking, yeah, I can do that anyway. All I do is connect by VPN, put in the IP address and port number, and I can connect to the service that way. Yep, that's true. But some containers, they require a domain name to actually work. Take Bitwarden for example. In the Bitwarden app, we need to put in the URL of the server, like https warden.yourdomain.com. The Bitwarden app can't function if it can't connect to the server, and it has to do that through a domain. So what I'll be demonstrating in part 2 is installing Tailscale directly into Swag, a container which is a reverse proxy, then setting up DNS records for a subdomain to point to the Tailscale IP address inside of the Swag container. So this setup then ensures that our Bitwarden instance is accessible through its domain name from anywhere in the world where we're connected to our tailnet, but it remains invisible and totally secure from the rest of the world. Pretty awesome, I think. Then in the third part of the video series, we're going to be using Tailscale and Swag again, but this time for a different reason. Some people have something on their ISP which is called carrier grade NAT, which basically doesn't give you a publicly accessible IP address, so it's very difficult to host services when you've got that. Now, one such ISP is Starlink, and I've shown videos in the past how to use a Cloudflare tunnel to get around that. But when you're hosting like video services such as Jellyfin, you can run into problems when you're streaming a lot of video through a Cloudflare tunnel. So what we can do is use a very cheap VPS for kind of like $5 a month, use Tailscale and our reverse proxy Swag, and we can get around all limitations that carrier grade NAT gives us. But today in part 1, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing Tailscale on our Unraid server so we can connect to it from anything such as our phone or laptop, etc. Exactly the same as if we're sitting at home on our local network and accessing and using our Unraid server, accessing our network shares, our VMs, and our Docker containers. Now, for those of you who have used Tailscale before, you might have found that when you actually connect to the Unraid server and you go to the Docker tab, then go to one of your containers and click Open Web UI, when you're connected by Tailscale, it doesn't actually open it, because it tries to open it inside of the local IP address of what the Unraid server is. But we can get around that totally by using something called Subnet Routing, and it will allow us to use the server, like I say, exactly as if we were at home. And also we're going to be looking at how we can give someone else access to our server, or for them to give us access to their server. So you might want to link up two servers and be able to send a backup from one to the other. Well, you can do that over Tailscale. Okay, so as we're already on the Tailscale website, let's log into Tailscale here, get our account set up, and I'm going to add the PC that I'm on. So, first thing we need to do, basically just click on to log in. And so to access our free Tailscale account, and by the way with Tailscale we can have up to 100 devices in our account for absolutely free. We just need to choose our identity provider from one of these in the list here. Now I'm going to sign in here with Google, and I've set up a special account here just for this video, and I've given it a bit of a Game of Thrones theme, dragontailscale@gmail.com. Now I think we should just take a pause here and stop for a moment to talk about something. For those of us worried about privacy, and come on, most of us running Unraid, we're into self-hosting and we all worry about privacy, I just want to say the identity provider that we choose, and I'm using, like I said, Google here, it only handles the login process and it doesn't see any at all of the VPN data. The identity provider, it simply verifies who we are when we log in by providing our account name and related information to Tailscale. No data at all flows in the other direction. Our identity provider doesn't get any information about our VPN usage at all, not even what devices we have connected. It literally just does verify our identity for our Tailscale account. Okay, so now let's talk about how Tailscale works, because these are all important considerations to think about. Now, as I said earlier in the video, Tailscale uses WireGuard, an open source VPN protocol, well known for its simplicity and speed. And most of the time, Tailscale's job is to handle that initial handshake between our devices to establish a secure connection. This is why we don't have to do any port forwarding or setup in our routers. So once this initial handshake and connection's been set up, our server or our devices, they talk directly to each other through the encrypted WireGuard tunnel, keeping the data both safe and secure, because that connection is just a one-to-one connection between the two devices. Now, in certain conditions, it may not be possible for a direct connection to be established. You may have some weird networking configuration that just makes this direct connection impossible. And in these cases, it uses its relay servers to securely pass data between our devices. But even then, the data is still encrypted end-to-end with WireGuard, so the relay servers can't see our information. So this system ensures that our VPN traffic, it remains private and secure, whether the connection is direct or whether it's relayed. Okay, so let's go back to the setup. So here we need to choose whether we're using it for business use or personal use. I'm using it at home for my home server, so I'm going to click at home. So now we need to choose the first device that we're going to add to what's called our tailnet. Now our tailnet is basically our collection of things in the VPN. Now I'm currently on a Windows machine here, so I'd choose download Tailscale for Windows here. And this takes us to the Tailscale download page. Now obviously here, if you weren't using Windows, you wouldn't download this here. Here we got links to macOS, iOS, Windows, Linux and Android. So obviously if you're a macOS, you click here for the download link for the macOS version. Now if you're on Linux, you install with a command line. You can just copy this command and paste it into terminal. And for iOS, basically that's just done through the iOS store, and also Android, the same, but through the Google Play Store. Well, I'm using Windows, so I'm going to download Tailscale for Windows here. So let's install Tailscale. So obviously this is just installing the Tailscale app on my Windows 10 machine here. So now I have to authenticate this machine into my tailnet. So to do that, I've clicked on the Tailscale icon, and now I'm going to use my identity provider again. So I'm going to click onto Google here. And now it's asking if I want to connect this Windows device to my tailnet. So login is successful and the device is connected. So now it's brought us back to the initial page. So I'm going to click at home again and next. And here we can see the desktop device along with its Tailscale IP here. Now in the top right hand corner here, I'm going to click onto my name here, go to appearance, and I'm going to give it a dark mode, I think. Now yes, I do want to add another device, but I'm not going to be doing it from here. Even though Unraid is running off Linux, I'm not going to use the command. So because I'm already familiar with Tailscale, I'm going to click here, skip this introduction. At the top here, if I click onto machines, I can see here is my Windows desktop. Now just so I can differentiate this a bit easier, I'm going to click onto it and then go to the machine settings here. and I'm going to edit the machine name, and instead of having it auto-generate, I'm going to give it my own name, Windows 10-ed. Okay, so now when I click back on machines here, it's easy for me to see what's what. Renaming the machines if they don't have a very user-friendly name is a really good idea, especially when you get more things into your tailnet. Okay, so now let's add our second device, which is going to be the Unraid Server. Now we're not going to do it from here by clicking Add Device. Even though Unraid is a flavour of Linux, we're not going to be using this command to install it. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Unraid Server here, go to the Apps tab, and here in Community Applications, let's search for Tailscale. Now this next bit is really important. Now you'll see here there's a Tailscale that says Monthly Spotlight. Now don't install this one. This is a Docker container version, and it's much better to install the plugin. Now you might wonder why. Well, if you install Tailscale as a container, one, it's actually harder to set up, but two, it means if you ever stop the Docker service, then the VPN's going to stop. So that means you can't stop the Docker service and make any kind of changes if you're troubleshooting remotely, and it means you're not going to be able to stop the array either. However, installing Tailscale as a plugin, it interacts with the system on a much lower level, so it's a much tighter integration, and it means we can stop the array, stop the Docker service, and we're not going to lose connection with the VPN. So let's get the plugin installed. Okay, so the plugin's now installed. Let's go to Settings here, and we can see we've got the Tailscale icon under Network Services. So let's click onto that. And the plugin's going to ask us to re-authenticate, and it says re-authenticate even though it's the first time that this actual device is being connected to the tailnet. So let's click onto that, and as I was already logged into my Tailscale here, I don't have to actually use my identity provider. If I wasn't, we'd have to go through that again, and then when on this page we just click on to connect, and again, just like the Windows device, it says login is successful, and now here we can see my two devices. Now it's taken the actual name of the Unraid server, so I'm actually fine with this name, I'm not going to rename it. And so now here we can see the IP address of my Unraid server. Now it's got a different IP address, here it's 186.120.57. So I'm going to copy that here onto my clipboard, and then in a new browser window here, we're going to paste the IP address, and we can see at the moment it says it's unable to connect. So what we need to do is back on the Unraid server, on the plugins page, if we go to Settings here, and we need to select the advanced view by clicking up the top here, and we need to make sure that use Tailscale DNS settings, we want that set to yes. Okay, so I'm going to click on to apply, and I'm just going to click on restart here. If I paste in the IP address again, now this time you can see I'm logging into the same server. So I'm going to pop in my username and password, and I'm logged straight into the server. And like I said before, because this is a plugin, if I wanted to, I could stop the array, reboot the server, and as soon as the server restarted, I'd be back with the VPN, and I can stop the Docker service. Basically, I can do anything that I could as if I was sat in front of the server at home. Now, there's one thing to notice here, that if I go onto the Docker tab here, and say I want to open this MB server, and I click Web UI, well, everything's good, it's working, it's logged straight in, yeah? Well, if we look at this IP address here, this is the local IP address of the Unraid server and the MB port of 8096. But this is only working now because I'm actually at home in my local network. Working at home, I'm logged into the server via the Tailscale IP. But what happens if I actually wasn't at home and I wanted to actually log into MB? Well, it's still going to bring it up as the server IP and MB's port of 8096. So let's go across to another Windows machine that's also on the tailnet, but it's the other side of the country. And jumping across to the Tailscale admin screen, we can see that particular Windows machine here. So let's jump across onto that machine, log into it, and see what happens. So again, let's go to the Docker tab here, hit Web UI. Well, you can see it's trying to open it on the local address over in my network, so it's never going to work. Now, in fact, there is one thing we could do. We could just take MB's port number here and copy it onto the clipboard, and then paste that at the end of the actual Tailscale Unraid Server IP. So I'm going to put colon, then paste in 8096. Now that's going to take me to the Emby container, but that's nasty, horrible and clunky. Who wants to do that, hey? So what we need to do is we need to advertise a subnet route. And we can actually do that from this Windows 10 over Tailscale. So if I go to settings here and go to Tailscale, if I go down here and click on this subnet router here, you can see it says it's not advertising any routes. Now that's because we manually have to put them in through command line. So let's open up a web terminal window here. I'm going to type Tailscale space up space hyphen hyphen and then advertise hyphen routes then equals, and then I put in the subnet. Now I'm sure some of you out there are wondering just what is a subnet. That is basically just a range of IP addresses. Now say we had our server and its IP address was 192.168.1.100. This lies in the IP address range of 192.168.1 and then from 0 all the way up to 255. So basically that is the network range or the subnet, and it isn't normally written this way. It's written in the format called a CIDR, yes, like the beverage, but not quite as refreshing. And the CIDR donation would be a /24 network. So it'd look like this: 192.168.1.0 and so that's exactly the same as what we can see above. Now just as a little side note, although it says it's from 0 to 255, we can't actually use 0 or 255 because they're basically reserved IP addresses. We'd just be able to use from 1 up to 254. Now we can write a single IP address as well in a CIDR donation. So for the 192.168.1.100, we put after that a /32, and that basically just means that it's only that IP address. So with that in mind, let's go back to our advertised subnet routes. So what I'm going to put in here is, if you remember, my server IP was 10.10.20.196. So if I put in here 10.10.20.0 and then /24, that's going to give me the whole network range that the Unraid server's on. And if we went back to our example of the 192 network, because I know a lot of you guys out there may have your server on a 192.168.1 network. So for there, we'd just put 192.168.1.0 /24. Basically, you need to put in the network range that your Unraid server's on. Now, mine obviously isn't on this one. Mine's on the 10.10.20 network. So I'm going to pop that back in. So with that done, let's hit enter. And you may get a little warning like this, but don't worry about it, you can ignore it. And now if I have a look here, there's that route that I put in, but it says it's pending approval. So now we want to have a look at our Tailscale account on the internet. And so what we can see here, when I go back into look at the machines, we can see here, we've got this little blue bit that says Imperial Walker's got subnets. So I'm going to click onto the 3 dots here, and I'm going to go to edit route settings here. So here, now I can tick this, and basically that's going to approve Tailscale being able to route any traffic to this subnet through this Tailscale device. So now I'm going to click onto save. Now if we go back onto the Unraid server here and we refresh this, we'll see here it no longer says that the routes are pending. They're active now. So now this is the page that I had open earlier that I couldn't actually reach Emby from, because it couldn't access this actual IP. So now I'm going to just click try again, and now let's see what happens. Here we are, I'm straight into Emby, no problem at all. Now because we've routed our subnet, we can do some other things as well. You can see here that I'm connected to the Unraid server through the Tailscale IP, but also I can just go now through the normal IP. So I can pop in 10.10.20.196, and I can log in with the same IP as if I was at home. But also I can log into another server as well. So 10.10.20.200, I can log into that server here. And I can even log into my pfSense. So basically, through the Tailscale on this Unraid server, When I'm connected to my tailnet, I can access anything on my local network at home. Now, to be honest, I don't really like doing this. I prefer to be more granular, and I'd rather just put the IP address of this particular server in. Now, my reason being for that is I've got multiple Unraid servers on my network, and I'd much rather have each one do its own routing for its own local IP address. I think it's much cleaner, and also it's more secure. It's much better to just open up things that you actually need to access rather than just opening everything. And that includes when you're using a VPN as well. You know, if you lost your laptop, well, you know, the VPN isn't going to be that secure, is it, if someone can access your laptop? So keep things as limited, in my opinion, as you actually need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back now over here, and I'm going to change this here to tailscale up --advertise -routes equals 10.10.20.196, and then because this is one IP address on its own, the CIDR denomination is going to be /32. And again, we're getting that little warning. So now we can see here this is a pending approval, and it's taken over the place of the other one. So I'm back here logged in the admin center of the web UI of my Tailscale, and I'm going to go to edit route settings again here, and we can see here it says that the device is no longer actually advertising this route. So I'm going to click remove, and I'm going to approve just this one. And so now if we go back here, I can still access through the local IP address, the Unraid server, 10.10.20.196. And I can also access my Docker containers, but I can't access anything else. So if I go back to pfSense 10.10.20.1, well, I can't get through to that. So that's perfect, that's just what I want. And also I can't reach the other server, the 10.10.20.200. I'm not going to be able to get there too. But maybe you'd want to actually reach two different destinations. Well, we can do that as well. If we come back here and we type in the same command, we can actually add additional subnets by putting a comma and then popping in the next subnet. So if I put in 10.10.20.200/32, well, that's going to advertise that other route as well. So again, we go back to the Tailscale web UI here and go to edit route settings, and now we can see there's two here, so I'm going to approve the second one as well. So now back here, refreshing this page, well, I can get back to this server as well. So I think that's a really cool thing, very, very useful thing in Tailscale, and it definitely makes it a lot more useful. Okay, so the last thing we'll look at in this part one of Tailscale is how we can actually share something on our tailnet with someone else. So if I wanted to share this server here with someone else, all I need to do is click share, and I can send someone either a share link, which I can copy here and paste to someone else, or I can just pop in their email address, and I'm going to put in a test email here, spaceinvader.testing@gmail.com, and I'm going to click share. And so now if I go across to that mailbox, we can see here it says that a device has been shared with me over Tailscale. So if I click onto that, and then all I need to do is click accept invite, and obviously I'm not going to log in with the same account I shared it from, but if I log in with the Space Invader testing account here, I can accept the invite, and we can see here that the server's been shared in to this Tailscale account here. So any of these machines using this IP would be able to connect to this server. So it's a really easy way to actually share things with other people. If I wanted someone to actually log into my server and grab some files, this can be really useful. If you needed a friend to have a look at your server because something's up with it, you can just share it with Tailscale with them for a short amount of time. They can have a look and help you fix it. Or you can even share a network share over Tailscale. You can do rsync over Tailscale, ZFS replication over Tailscale. There's so much you could do. And say you don't want to share it anymore, all you need to do is log back into your own Tailscale account, click on the server that you shared, and here you can see the list of the people that are sharing your server, and you can click the 3 dots here and then just revoke access. So I can see this is no longer being shared, and going back into the other account now, we can see this person's no longer got access to that server. So another really useful feature. Anyway guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up for part 1 here. Now I really hope you found this video useful and it showed you some things about Tailscale that maybe you didn't know before. I find Tailscale awesomely useful and I probably use it every day. Anyway guys, if you did like this video, then please give it a big like, subscribe to the channel and share this video with anyone else who you might think will like it as well. Now as always, I want to give a really big thank you to all of my patrons and supporters who make it possible for me to make these videos. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. And also, I just want to thank everyone who watches these videos for taking the time to watch my work. Anyway guys, it's getting a bit late here and it's time for me to go, but whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good, and I'll catch you in the next video.